Hi everyone, this is Matthew Breuer. I'm an MFT intern at the Tierney Psychotherapy Group in downtown San Francisco, and I'd like to present to you today on the topic of spiritual emergence, spiritual emergencies, or psychosis. So this is kind of a field of looking at mental health that not everyone has heard of. And to define this term, originally spiritual emergencies were kind of a neutral way of looking at it, and then they decided, Stanislav Grof, being the founder of this term, to term it emergence as a little bit more of a positive connotation. So this term defines natural occurrences in personal evolution in which a person feels disoriented and overwhelmed for a period of time by spiritual experiences beyond the realm of the intellect. So some people have phases in their life where things don't quite make sense anymore. It's not as destabilizing as a psychosis. Their ego, instead of being inundated and not able to handle what's going on, can actually, with support, make sense of everything that's going on, as I see it, an opening to the unconscious. In some ways, it's almost like you've entered a dream world, and it causes you to question your previous worldview and can be looked at as an expansion in consciousness. So some typical symptoms of spiritual emergency can include being bombarded with unusual inner experiences and/or information that you didn't know before. It can include having old beliefs and ways of being in the world challenged, finding it difficult to cope with the demands of everyday life. It also means having difficulty distinguishing the transpersonal world from the world of shared reality. Another way of defining transpersonal is things that are beyond the ego. In the work of Ken Wilber, he discusses prepersonal, personal, and transpersonal, and that prepersonal, beginning phases of life, we have not yet formed an ego or an identity. And then, as for most people, we live in the realm of the ego, in the personal. But for some people that practice meditation and different consciousness expansion exercises, they can find a way to go beyond the ego. And one way of looking at that is to get in touch with the witness, to see their own thoughts and emotions as clouds in the sky, as if they were the sky instead of the clouds. Spiritual emergency or emergence can also include physical sensations of energies throughout the body. Some might look at that as a Kundalini awakening when it starts at the base of the spine and goes up the chakra system. I know we might have some more skeptical people in the audience, and it's just a different way of looking at our nervous system and different bioenergies. Spiritual emergency can also include a strong urge to communicate these experiences, to share what is happening, and oftentimes what the experience holds are gifts to society and other people, to help us get outside of the rut of our everyday normal experience, and look into the world in kind of extraordinary ways. Spiritual emergency can also include feeling like you have unusual or paranormal powers and are kind of the only one that knows these truths. You might also, in a little bit more of a struggle, feel like you are going to die. And in some ways, this is like the hero's journey, where it does involve a death and a rebirth of a previous identity as one comes to a new way of being in the world. And finally, this is based off of, I could have included that in the beginning, all these different criteria, symptoms are based off of work done by the Spiritual Emergence Network, which has a website by that name, the .org. So the last of these kind of symptoms or criteria are potential telepathic experiences and communications from more like the spirit world. And this could be looked at as what different shamans throughout the ages have had, and a way of going through reality in a form of our body other than just our biological one. So those are some of the criteria of a spiritual emergence or emergency. And I wanted to share a quote with you by Carl Jung, one of my favorites, that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And the reason I thought of this quote is because in a lot of ways, in these experiences, you're beginning to make the unconscious conscious. So these different pathways in life don't seem just predestined anymore. You feel like you're going along and understanding. As they say in the Matrix movies, Morpheus says, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. Another thing I wanted to share was my own experience of spiritual emergency. And in my case, it was mixed with psychosis, really all tangled together. So I just want to show you here on the handout, we have the labyrinth pattern based off of the one in Chartres Cathedral in France. And so in college, I went off my medication and I got super manic to the point of having kind of magical thinking, some paranoia, a little bit delusional stuff, and I could see symbols and everything. And oddly enough, in my journey, I got a book that I actually have right here from my college mentor. And in it, I came across this particular pattern of the labyrinth. And you can see that right here. And I read about it, and another way of looking at it as initial confrontation with the unconscious, in the same way that Carl Jung had his Red Book journey, or Liber Novus. He wondered if he was menaced by a psychosis or doing a schizophrenia himself. And so this was my introduction to Jung in a deeper way. And as I was walking around my college campus, I also noticed that this labyrinth pattern was painted on the pavement. Now, I happened to go back to my high school in my hometown and talk to my mentor there, and he felt for some reason like giving me this wood cutout from Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, based off of the one in Chartres, France. Kind of interesting. And then I go back to my college campus and I notice that near that labyrinth on the pavement is a statue entitled Synchronicity. Now, to define this term, it is considered an acausal connecting principle, that an unconscious event is connected with an external world reality in a meaningful way that appears to be more than just coincidence. And I am aware that, oftentimes we make our own meaning out of things, but to have this symbol show up in so many ways is pretty particular and peculiar. And last but not least, I go to my graduate school and we begin the year at a retreat center, and guess what? The labyrinth pattern shows up again, this time on the ground in stones. And I am the labyrinth walker, the wounded healer, following my path into the unconscious as a healer. So that was my own experience with spiritual emergency. Now I'd like to turn to the other side of the sheet and give 2 book recommendations. I've not read this particular one by Stanislav Grof. It's called Spiritual Emergency: When Personal Transformation Becomes a Crisis. I have read some of his other work and I am familiar with some of his ideas. He also happens to be involved at my school, California Institute of Integral Studies. Or he was more so, at least at one point, and he does his holotropic breath work as a way of entering a psychedelic type of state without the use of substances. Another book recommendation is called Healing the Split: Integrating Spirit into Our Understanding of the Mentally Ill by John Nelson. This book really helped me to understand how there's a difference between a spiritual awakening and a mental illness just being catastrophic. He talks about how schizophrenia is a quantitative shift in consciousness that often doesn't have the same benefits that occur in moments of bipolar mental health conditions, where there is both a quantitative and qualitative. And in that qualitative shift, before it becomes quantitatively overwhelming, there can be some of this expansion of the ego, the boundaries, into the unconscious. Now, I wanted to give another resource for people that are interested in these types of experience. And there's a group at my school called Spiritual Emergence CIIS. And they have a website by that name, .com. And check it out if you want some support and resources. They're really great. And I'm trying to go quickly here a little bit because I want to make this, again, palatable and easy to digest. So the last thing I'll leave you with is a quote by Socrates as recorded in the Phaedrus by Plato. And basically what it's saying is that madness and creativity and openings to the spirit world are something that has been a part of human history for a very long time. Quote, "There is also a madness which is a divine gift, and the source of the chiefest blessings granted to men. For prophecy is a madness, and the prophetess at Delphi and the priestesses at Dodona, when out of their senses, have conferred great benefits on Hellas, both in public and private life, but when in their senses, few or none." So, some of the greatest sages and mystics have had these kind of otherworldly experiences that have greatly benefited humankind and opened us to different religious pathways into the beyond. And just as a quote that I often like from the Oracle at Delphi, supposedly, is that of know thyself. Also could be translated as look at thyself, as if from an external witness meditative perspective. See thyself clearly. And just because I like languages, sometimes I'll leave you with it in Latin and in Greek. In Latin it is temet no se, and in Greek it is note se auton. So hopefully I did okay, gave justice to the pronunciation. Just show you as a final ending a little drawing there of the Oracle at Delphi. And I wish you well, and feel free to let me know if you have any questions or concerns in the comments. Subscribe, and I hope if you're in the Bay Area, you can join us for our bipolar therapy group on Wednesday nights from 7:30 to 8:30. Please reserve a spot, and we meet in downtown San Francisco. Check out my website for more information. Take care, everyone.